When you subtly copy someone's posture or gestures, their brain registers you as familiar and trustworthy almost instantly. This happens because mirroring activates a sense of shared experience, triggering the same neural pathways involved in feeling understood. In studies, people rated strangers who mirrored them as significantly more likable without ever consciously noticing the mimicry. Negotiators, therapists, and salespeople are trained to use this technique deliberately, because it works even when the other person has no idea it's happening. People who speak slowly are perceived as more powerful, intelligent, and in control than fast talkers. This is attention, while a measure. Research shows that CEOs, judges, and leaders naturally lower their speech rate in high-stakes moments to project dominance. Even more surprising, listeners actually retain more information from slow speakers, meaning the habit builds real influence over time. Hearing your own name activates the brain's reward centers in the same way food or money does. This is why skilled salespeople and leaders make a point of using your name repeatedly in conversation. Dale Carnegie famously built an entire philosophy around this single neurological quirk in his best-selling book. So the next time someone remembers your name after just one meeting, your brain is literally rewarding you for it. Holding eye contact for exactly 4 seconds triggers a measurable surge of oxytocin, the same bonding chemical released between mothers and newborns. Researchers found this specific duration sits in a sweet spot, long enough to signal genuine interest, short enough to avoid feeling threatening. Most strangers instinctively break gaze after 1.5 seconds, meaning 4 seconds of eye contact almost always registers as meaningful connection. This simple technique is used by therapists, negotiators, and even professional actors to build instant trust with someone they just met. Holding a warm cup of coffee can actually make strangers seem friendlier and more trustworthy to you. In a landmark Yale study, people who briefly held a hot drink rated others as having warmer personalities. But here's the twist, it works both ways, and warm hands make you seem more generous and caring to others. Your brain uses physical temperature. Someone a question, they're significantly more likely to say yes. This happens because nodding is a powerful social mirror. The other person unconsciously mimics your movement, and that physical motion actually shapes their mental response. Researcher Gary Wells confirmed this effect, showing that even strangers adopt the emotional and physical cues of those speaking to them within seconds. When you ask someone a question and stay silent, most people feel compelled to keep talking, and that second answer is almost always more honest. This happens because silence creates psychological discomfort called dead air anxiety, triggering a deep social urge to fill the void. Therapists, detectives, and skilled negotiators deliberately use this technique to pull out confessions, real feelings, and information people never intended to share. The uncomfortable pause essentially short-circuits our rehearsed responses, forcing our unfiltered truth to the surface. Standing tall with your shoulders back doesn't just signal confidence to others, it actually rewires how your brain feels from the inside. Research shows that adopting an upright posture increases testosterone, lowers cortisol, and shifts your brain toward more powerful, decisive thinking within minutes. This means your body isn't just reacting to your emotions, it's actively creating them, giving you a physical shortcut to a bolder mindset. So before a stressful moment, straightening your spine isn't just good manners, it's a neurological reset button hiding in plain sight. When you ask someone for a tiny favor first, they're far more likely to say yes to a much bigger request later. This is called the foot in the door technique, and it works because people subconsciously update their self-image to see themselves as someone who helps. In a famous 1966 study, people who agreed to put a small sign in their window were later twice as likely to allow a huge billboard in their yard. Your brain essentially rewrites your identity around your actions, making future compliance feel natural rather than forced. Whispering triggers an automatic psychological response where your brain interprets lowered volume as a signal that information is exclusive and valuable. Studies show people rate whispered information as significantly more credible and trustworthy than the same words spoken at normal volume. This scarcity of sound effect makes your mind treat whispered content like a rare commodity, increasing both attention and emotional investment in what's cooperates perfectly. Genuine smile, called a Duchenne smile, activates the orbicularis oculi muscle around your eyes, causing those tiny crinkles and a slight eye squint, and this muscle movement is nearly impossible to fake on command. Scientists discovered this by studying people who had lost voluntary control smiles when experiencing real makes you feel safer and more open than sitting face to face. Direct eye contact triggers a primal threat detection response in the brain, raising subtle stress signals even between friendly people. That's why therapists, negotiators, and savvy parents often have their most successful conversations during car rides or walks. The shared forward gaze creates psychological alliance instead of psychological opposition, making honesty feel less risky. Even strangers open up faster when seated shoulder to shoulder, which is why the best confessions often happen at a bar counter. When someone is talking to you, simply repeating their last few words back to them creates an almost instant feeling of being truly heard. This technique, used by therapists and negotiators alike, signals deep attention without requiring you to offer advice or solutions. The brain interprets the echo as proof you were fully present, triggering trust and emotional connection almost automatically. Perfectly symmetrical faces actually make people feel uneasy, even though we assume perfection would be most attractive. Slight natural asymmetry signals that a face is real, alive, and trustworthy rather than artificial or manipulated. Studies show that when researchers digitally perfect a face into full symmetry, observers consistently rate it as less genuine and harder to trust. Waitstaff who briefly touch a customer's arm while taking an order more than works because a light, non-intrusive touch triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, making you feel an instant sense of warmth and connection toward that person. Your subconscious mind interprets that brief touch as a signal of trust and friendliness, so you naturally want to reward the person who gave you that feeling. When you admit a small flaw or weakness up front, people trust everything else you say far more. This is called the Pratfall effect, and researchers found that showing minor imperfection actually makes you seem more competent and honest, not less. Politicians, advertisers, and lawyers use this deliberately, leading with a small confession disarms skepticism before it even starts. Your brain interprets the admission as proof that someone isn't hiding anything bigger, so it lowers its guard completely. Asking someone for advice doesn't make you look weak, it actually makes them like you more. This is called the Pratfall of competence flip, but more relevantly, it ties into the Benjamin Franklin effect, where the act of doing someone a favor makes the helper feel warmer toward you. When you ask for advice, people feel valued, competent, and important, and their brain associates that good feeling directly with you. So next time you want someone on your side, don't impress them, ask them what they think instead. We form judgments about whether someone can be trusted in just 1/10 of a second, before they've even said a word. Research by Princeton psychologist Alexander Todorov found these snap judgments, while often inaccurate, strongly predict real-world outcomes like election results. Even more striking, giving people more time to study a face barely changes their initial verdict, the first impression locks in almost instantly. When you unconsciously match someone's speaking pace, slowing down when they're calm, speeding up when they're excited, their brain registers you as safer and more trustworthy. This is called speech rate convergence, and studies show it happens within just 30 seconds of conversation without either person realizing it. The brain's social bonding circuits literally respond to rhythmic matching the same way they respond to physical synchrony, like walking in step. Try deliberately matching someone's speech speed in your next conversation, they'll feel unusually connected to you without knowing why. When you see only 3 left, or offer ends tonight, your brain doesn't just note the information, it hijacks your rational thinking entirely. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, treats scarcity like a physical threat, flooding your body with the same urgency chemicals as actual danger. This is why people buy things they never planned to buy, simply because a deadline appeared. The emotional system overrides logic before you even realize it happened. When you notice a gap between what you know and what you want to know, your brain treats it almost like physical discomfort. It genuinely needs to close that gap. Researchers found that curiosity activates the same neural reward pathways as hunger, meaning your mind will keep seeking information the way your body seeks food. This is why cliffhangers, unanswered questions, and incomplete sentences are so devastatingly hard to ignore. Your brain isn't being weak, it's doing exactly what it was built to do. If you call someone a generous person, they're far more likely to actually become generous, not just act politely in the moment. This is called the labeling effect, and studies show that people deeply want their behavior to match the identity others assign them. In one famous experiment, people told they were tidy individuals kept their spaces significantly cleaner for weeks afterward. Simply put, the labels we give people don't just describe who they are, they quietly shape who they become. Research shows that emotional memory is processed in the amygdala, which encodes feelings far more deeply than the verbal cortex encodes words. This means someone might forget your entire speech, but remember the shame or warmth you triggered in them for decades. Studies on patients with memory loss confirm this. Even people who cannot recall a conversation still retain the emotional impression it left behind. When someone opens with a personal weakness or admission, your brain's threat detection system immediately lowers its guard. This is because vulnerability signals honesty, and the brain interprets honesty as safety rather than danger. Research shows people who share a flaw early in a conversation are rated as significantly more trustworthy than those who appear polished and perfect. This technique, sometimes called the Pratfall effect of disclosure, is used by skilled negotiators and therapists to build rapid trust. When people end sentences with a rising pitch, like a question, listeners automatically perceive them as less confident, even if the words themselves sound assertive. This vocal pattern, called high-rising terminal, triggers an ancient social instinct in the human brain to interpret upward pitch as a request for approval or confirmation. Studies show that speakers who eliminate rising endings are rated as significantly more competent and trustworthy simply by keeping their voice level or dropping it slightly at the end. Just flattening that final note can completely transform how others perceive your authority and certainty. When two people walk side by side, their breathing patterns naturally begin to sync within minutes, and this physical alignment quietly signals safety to the brain. This respiratory synchrony triggers the release of oxytocin, the same bonding chemical released during hugs, making strangers feel surprisingly familiar and trustworthy. Ancient humans used this mechanism to coordinate during hunts and migrations, and your nervous system still runs that same program today. So the next time you want someone to open up, skip the coffee shop, just take a walk. Shared laughter triggers oxytocin release significantly faster than deep conversation ever can. This is why you feel instantly bonded to strangers after laughing at the same thing. Scientists found that even fake laughter with someone still activates this bonding chemical in both brains simultaneously. So next time, find something funny instead. Agree, something fascinating. The idea originated from them. Research shows people are far more committed to decisions they believe they made freely, even when the question subtly guided them there the whole time. If you want someone to open up, start by sharing something small and slightly vulnerable about yourself. This triggers a powerful psychological phenomenon called self-disclosure reciprocity, where people feel a deep social obligation to match your level of openness. Studies show that confessions, even minor ones like admitting you burned breakfast, dramatically lower the emotional guard of the person listening. It's essentially a trust unlock code built into human social wiring, making the other person feel safe enough to reveal far more than they originally intended. Having a common enemy bonds people together faster and more deeply than having a common friend. This happens because shared threats trigger our ancient tribal survival instincts, forcing strangers into an immediate us versus them alliance. Research shows that negatively bonding over a disliked person creates stronger interpersonal chemistry than positively connecting over someone you both admire. Scientists call this negative bond formation, and it explains why office gossip, rival sports teams, and political opponents accidentally build some of the tightest social communities. Significantly more. This happens because decision-making energy depletes throughout the day, making people more agreeable and open. Before lunch. Your hands are shaking, your voice sounds unsteady, and you're sure everyone in the room can tell you're terrified, but research shows they almost certainly can't. This is called the illusion of transparency, where we believe our internal emotions leak out far more visibly than they actually do. In studies, nervous speakers consistently rated themselves as far more obviously anxious than their audiences actually perceived them to be. So next time you feel exposed by your nerves, remember, the audience sees a much calmer version of you than the one inside your head. When you write a promise down by hand, your brain treats it almost like a physical contract your body has signed. Studies show people who commit things in writing feel genuine psychological discomfort, almost like a physical weight, if they break that commitment. This is called the commitment and consistency effect, and advertisers, negotiators, and therapists all use it deliberately to make agreements stick. When you're physically cold, your brain automatically craves human connection and social warmth, not just metaphorically, but as a genuine biological response. Studies show that people who held a cold drink rated strangers as having colder personalities, while those holding warm drinks saw the same strangers as friendlier and more generous. Your brain processes physical temperature and social warmth in the same region, meaning loneliness and being cold actually feel neurologically similar, which is why a hot shower can briefly reduce feelings of isolation. You're more likely to trust, date, or even buy from someone who shares your birthday or initials, and you probably have no idea it's happening. Psychologists call this the name-letter effect, and it reveals how deeply our identity shapes our unconscious preferences and decisions. Something as random as sharing the number 14 or the initials G quietly nudges your brain toward familiarity and positive feeling. Saying thank you before asking someone for a favor nearly doubles the chance they'll say yes, and this works even with strangers. Researchers found that expressing genuine appreciation activates a sense of social obligation in the listener's brain, making them feel valued and therefore more motivated to help. This means simply starting a request with "I really appreciate you" isn't just polite, it's one of the most powerful psychological triggers for cooperation ever documented. Pausing before you answer a question actually makes people trust your response more, even if the answer is identical to one given instantly. Research shows that a brief delay signals to others that you're carefully weighing the truth, rather than just saying whatever comes to mind first. This effect is so powerful that lawyers and negotiators are trained to pause deliberately, because it makes them appear more credible and composed under pressure. Would you rather save $100? Feel identical, but your brain reacts all the same thing. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and marketers, doctors, and negotiators use it constantly to influence decisions. Telling someone they'll lose years of their life by smoking is far more persuasive than telling them they'll gain years by quitting. Just having a photo of ice nearby makes people behave more honestly and work harder even when they know it's just a picture. Researchers tested this in an office kitchen with an honesty box, and contributions tripled when eyes were watching from a poster on the wall. Scientists believe our brains evolved to respond automatically to the feeling of being observed, triggering social instincts we simply cannot switch off. This effect is called the watching eyes phenomenon, and it works even with cartoon eyes, suggesting the response is deeply hardwired into us. When you tell someone you're busy, their brain automatically assumes you must be important and in demand. This is because humans are wired to use scarcity as a mental shortcut for value. If your time is rare, it must be worth something. Studies show that simply saying "I only have a few minutes" before a conversation makes the other person listen more carefully and respect your opinion more. It's an accidental status signal that triggers the same psychology behind why sold-out products feel more desirable than available ones. "An apple a day keeps the doctor away" feels true partly just because it rhymes. Psychologists call this the rhyme as reason effect. Our brains process rhyming phrases more fluently, and that ease gets misread as truthfulness. In studies, people consistently rated rhyming statements as more advertisers and politicians have quietly exploited this cognitive shortcut for centuries, embedding their messages in rhythm so your brain trusts them before you even think critically. People who remember small, unexpected details about you, like a hobby you mentioned once in passing, are perceived as significantly more trustworthy and caring. Research shows this effect is so powerful that it activates the same neural reward pathways as receiving a gift, making you feel genuinely valued rather than just remembered. This is why skilled therapists, leaders, and salespeople are trained to recall obscure personal facts. It creates a sense of deep connection that's almost impossible to fake. When you ask someone why 3 times in a row, you bypass their rehearsed explanations and reach the actual emotional root of their behavior. This technique, borrowed from Japanese manufacturing psychology and adapted by therapists, works because the first 2 answers are usually logical justifications we tell ourselves, and reveals the vulnerable. This method to uncover hidden fears, unmet needs, or childhood patterns driving decisions people don't even consciously recognize in themselves. When a single person looks up at the sky with total confidence, within seconds a crowd of strangers will stop and look up too, even with no explanation given. This is called social proof cascading, where the brain instantly treats confident action as evidence of important information, bypassing rational thought entirely. Studies show it only takes one committed actor moving with certainty to trigger this chain reaction in dozens of people within moments. When you say you need to fix this, the other person's brain instantly activates its threat detection system, triggering defensiveness. But switching to "we could try this together" reframes the situation as a shared challenge rather than a personal attack. Research shows this single word swap can reduce psychological reactivity almost immediately, making the other person far more open to change. When you frighten someone and then immediately comfort them, they feel deeply bonded to you. This is called the security threat relief cycle. The brain tags the comforter stress spike. This is why people sometimes feel loyal to those who first made them feel unsafe. Cults, manipulative partners, and even hazing rituals all exploit this exact mechanism. A vague "I'm sorry" rarely heals a wound, but mentioning exactly what you did wrong dramatically speeds up forgiveness. Research shows that specific apologies signal genuine awareness, proving to the offended person that you truly understood the harm caused. When someone hears the precise details of their pain acknowledged, their brain registers it as accountability rather than just damage control. Ending a conversation first, before it feels finished, actually makes the other person want to continue it more. This is called the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains fixate on incomplete experiences far more than completed ones. So when you're the one who wraps things up early, you become the unresolved thought they can't shake. It flips the social dynamic entirely. Suddenly you're not chasing the connection, you're the one being chased.